Hello everyone and welcome back to Niger Gist Gang, your trusted source for verified updates and in-depth analysis on the key issues shaping Nigeria's political and economic landscape. I'm your host Precious and it's a pleasure to have you here with us today. In this episode, we turn our attention to the Emir of Kano, His Highness Sanusi Lamido Sanusi, following his recent interview that has sparked national reflection and debate. The Emir delivered a powerful critique of Nigeria's leadership culture, addressing what he described as a decline in values and the rise of praise singing among the educated elite. He questioned why individuals in positions of influence, many of them highly educated, often behave without integrity or independent thought, prioritizing personal gain over public service. Sanusi also discussed Nigeria's long-standing economic challenges, from the management of fuel subsidies to the complexities of fiscal and monetary policy, urging the government to focus on institutional reform and disciplined governance. The Emir's remarks go beyond criticism. They serve as a call for moral responsibility, visionary leadership, and a return to values that place service above self-interest. Stay tuned as we bring you key excerpts from that thought-provoking interview and explore the deeper implications of the Emir's message for Nigeria's leadership and future.
Nigeria is a classless society. If you take the people you call leaders, go to the Senate, go to the House of Reps, you can go and pick 109 Nigerians at random without election. Put them in the Senate chambers and the results may not be different from what you're getting now. Okay? Because the truth is, you have highly educated people in government, but they behave like illiterates. They forget their education behind. When you talk about praise singing, why would a man who is an educated man, an accomplished man, why would he be a praise singer to anyone? Why would he not be able to face his boss and say, Oga, we're not doing that, this is the truth? And why would a person in authority not have the confidence to listen to those around him and take criticism? So you've got people who are supposed to be the representatives of the values of society. By the time you become a governor, honestly, you should be beyond looking for money. You have been given an opportunity to take care of the lives of millions of people, to educate children, to save lives, to provide health care, to build infrastructure. And all you are thinking of is a car, a house. I mean, are you that cheap? or some bank account. And you see them, and at the end of the day, they leave office. After a few years, they die, and the children are fighting over the money. Then they get the money, and then they go on drugs, and everything is wasted. That money would have been better spent educating millions of young people and saving lives. So if we really want to fix this country, we need to have a class. The ruling class needs to have values. Values beyond stomach infrastructure. This leads to misplaced expectations. There's a role for the central bank. There's a role for the Ministry of Finance. You've got monetary policy, you have fiscal policy, you have structural policies, you have institutional reforms. And yes, I was one of those who commended the appointment of Wale Edun and Yemi Cardoso. These are two gentlemen that I've known for many years, and I have never had any question about their competence. And if you try to assess them, you've got to ask, what were they supposed to achieve? Okay. Now, going back to the beginning, you talk about 2012. And you talk about the suffering from removal of subsidy. It's simple arithmetic. If you're paying 80 naira or 65 naira per liter, and you begin to pay 160 naira per liter, costs will go up. There will be hardship. And the duty of leaders is to understand that there will be a cost to removing subsidy. And I said in 2012, if you remember from the town hall meeting, to say that there will be hardship is not an economic argument. To say that there will be a cost to removing subsidy is not an economic argument. The economic argument is, this is the cost of removing the subsidy. What is the cost of not removing the subsidy? Are you making a choice? We were in a situation where we had a hedge that we called, it was not a subsidy, it was a hedge. You see, a subsidy by definition, the government says, I will pay X% of the price. That is a subsidy. I'll pay 20% of the price, whatever it is. Price goes up, you pay more, I pay more. Price goes down, you pay less, I pay less. What we had in this country is what in risk management you call a naked hedge, the worst possible derivative you can have. The government said to Nigerians, 200 million Nigerians, you will not pay more than X amount per liter on petrol, no matter what the price of petrol is. So oil price goes up from $40 to $140, the federal government pays the difference. Exchange rate moves from 155 to 300, the government pays the difference. Interest rates move from 5% to 15%, the government pays it. Remember, the price of petrol and what the calculations include the costs of crude, the cost of refined product, the cost of transportation, even interest rates, demurrage. If you look at the template, all of those amounts were being absorbed. The federal government was saying, I have an unlimited pocket. So we moved from a point where we were using revenues to pay subsidy to where we had to borrow money to pay subsidy, to where we had to borrow money to pay interest on the borrowed money. We had become bankrupt. Anyone who takes a naked hedge ends up being bankrupted, especially with a commodity where you don't control the price. So this was the point in 2012. Now, if Nigerians had allowed the Jonathan government to remove the subsidy in 2011, that would have been pain. But that pain would have been a very, very tiny fraction of what we are facing today. This is the cost of delay. At that time, we worked out the numbers in the central bank, and I stood up and put my credibility on the line and said, remove the subsidy today, inflation moves up from 11% to 13%. I will bring it down in a year. We will not have had 30-something% inflation. Okay? That was where we were. Now, people like my friend Kaide Fayemi here and his APC friends had Occupy Nigeria, came out on the streets, told us we could not do it. And I remember calling one of my friends. And this is, we should talk about these things because it's important. There's a kind of poetic justice. That it is actually the people who led the Occupy Nigeria movement who ended up seeing the problem, inheriting the problem, and having to do it. I remember calling one of my friends at that time and said, look, one of my closest friends said, you know that what we're doing is right. He said, yes, I know. I said, why? He said, well, I'm in opposition. My job is to make the government look bad. You know, you are the governor of central bank, you go and defend your government. Just politics. And you know, the only reason the government compromised at that time, maybe we should know this, the only reason the government compromised and did 50% to 100% was Boko Haram. Because there were thousands of Nigerians on the streets in Lagos and Kano and Kaduna and all that. At the time we had suicide bombers in the country. And there was a fear. If one day one of these suicide bombers goes to these Nigerians and explodes the bomb and you have 200 corpses, it will no longer be about subsidy. So you have to give President Jonathan the credit. He was determined to do it, but at the end of the day, the compromise was made, okay, to save Nigerian lives. Now, what has the central bank achieved? Central bank's role is to provide stability. The central bank does not deliver growth. It does not deliver employment. It provides an environment that is conducive to growth. Okay? Now, and the central bank has achieved it. You don't want inflation moving from 10% to 15% to 20% to 25% because, as I said a few weeks ago at NESG, Nigerians don't realize that we were on the brink of hyperinflation. Beyond a certain rate of inflation, it becomes runaway inflation, you can't control it. You'd buy rice in the morning, by the time you come at 12 noon, the price has changed. By 4 p.m. it has changed. This is what happened in Zimbabwe, it happened in Venezuela, it happened in Argentina. We were heading for Nigeria, we're printing money like there's no tomorrow. We're heading for Nigeria, we're heading in the direction of Zimbabwe under Mugabe, or Uganda under Idi Amin. So inflation has been reined in. The runaway devaluation has been stopped. Yes, we're at 1,400. Nobody wants an naira at 1,400. But it's better to know that it will be 1,400 for the next 6 months, 8 months, 10 years, than to think it's 1,400 today, 2,000 tomorrow, 2,500, which is really... So the central bank's job is not to give you a strong naira. The central bank's job is not to give you low prices. The central bank's job is to reduce the volatility in the price level. And so when you assess the central bank, you've got to say, what has it done? Have you reduced volatility inflation? Have you brought it down? We're going to bring it down to single digit. You're on your way. There's still a long way to go. Okay, I would like to see inflation come down to under 10%. It will take time, but in terms of stopping it from running away, it has. Exchange rate volatility has been reduced. Now, on the fiscal side, and we talk about tax reforms. Those reforms, the Tax Act only takes off next year. So we must remember that before the tax reforms have kicked in, we have increased government revenues. We have brought down debt service ratios from 100 and something percent to about 40%. Okay, so on the revenue side, you've got to give the finance ministry credit for what it's done. Now, is there more to do? Yes. And the way where the problem is what Atedo has mentioned, is the expenditure side.
Yes.
Okay, the quality of spending. And some of these things we've got to be honest with ourselves. Look, why do we need 48 ministers? Why do we need dozens of vehicles when we're moving around in convoys or traveling all over the country?
So, Your Highness, that brings me to that question which I'm asking, which is, do we have an affliction that affects the hearing of our leaders and unable to listen to the good advice?
No, I mean,
if we have an affliction, we'll get a doctor to fix it.
Yes, so your question started with the finance minister and central bank governor, and we're saying that there are things that are beyond them when you're dealing with the economy. So I would go along with that and say you've got to look at overheads. You've got to look at things like your contract processing, procurement process, okay? There's still questions about inflated contracts. There are questions about transparency. There are questions, all this money is coming into the federal, and this at federal, state, and local level, there are serious questions about how the money that is being raised is being used. And the arithmetic is simple. If you stop paying subsidy, why are we still borrowing more? Because if you've filled a hole, we should have the revenue to fund expenditure. But we fill in one hole and dig in a bigger hole. So this government needs to look at institutions. It needs to look at the quality of spending. It needs to understand that if you keep making more money and keep blowing it away, you're going to undo what you have done. But apart from that, I think a lot of good has been done, okay? But we still have to look at what needs to be done.
The Emir of Kano, His Highness Sanusi Lamido Sanusi, has once again ignited a national conversation, this time challenging Nigeria's political class and intellectual elite on the erosion of values, leadership integrity, and the state of governance. In his recent interview, the Emir delivered a sharp critique of how individuals entrusted with public responsibilities have allowed personal interest and praise-seeking to replace principle and performance. He observed that Nigeria has, in his words, become a classless society where even the highly educated often behave without the discipline or integrity expected of their status. According to the Emir, leadership in Nigeria has drifted away from purpose. He questioned why accomplished, educated individuals in government have become sycophants rather than thinkers, afraid to speak the truth to power or challenge decisions that harm the public interest. Sanusi's remarks carried a deeper message about moral decay, that many who rise to positions of privilege quickly forget the weight of responsibility tied to government, the duty to serve, to educate, and to uplift millions of ordinary citizens. He went on to dissect the broader economic landscape, revisiting Nigeria's long-running debate over fuel subsidies. The Emir, who served as central bank governor, explained that the real danger lies not just in removing or retaining subsidies, but in the failure to manage the consequences effectively. He detailed how years of delayed action, political gamemanship, and misplaced populism have deepened the country's fiscal instability. Sanusi described the old subsidy structure as a naked hedge, a financial trap in which the government guaranteed petrol prices regardless of market fluctuations. This policy, he argued, led to a cycle of borrowing, inflation, and national insolvency. He contended that, had Nigeria acted decisively a decade ago, the current economic hardship might have been significantly reduced. In his view, true leadership requires foresight, the courage to take difficult decisions when necessary, and the humility to admit when systems have failed. He acknowledged some recent reforms by the Central Bank and the Ministry of Finance, particularly in efforts to stabilize inflation and improve government revenue. But he stressed that these gains could be easily undone without institutional discipline and responsible spending. Beyond economics, the Emir's reflections raised an even more profound question. What kind of values define Nigeria's ruling class today? He urged leaders to rediscover integrity, self-restraint, and empathy, virtues that form the moral foundation of any enduring nation. As he put it, governance should be about saving lives, building institutions, and creating opportunity, not about accumulating wealth or titles. His words resonate at a time when citizens are increasingly disillusioned with the political system and skeptical about whether those in authority can still act in the national interest. For many Nigerians, Sanusi's voice represents a moral conscience, one that speaks uncomfortable truths with intellectual clarity and patriotic conviction. But the challenge remains. Will those in power listen? Will Nigeria's leaders rise above self-preservation and embrace the reforms and values the Emir advocates? These are questions that demand not just reflection, but action, both from government officials and from the society that elects and empowers them. As Nigerians continue to navigate economic pressures, social divides, and governance failures, Sanusi's remarks reminds us that no reform can succeed without ethical leadership and collective responsibility. A nation, after all, is only as strong as the character of its leaders and the courage of its people to demand better. I'm Precious, and this is Niger Gang. We do love to hear your thoughts on the Emir's comments. Do you agree that Nigeria's leadership crisis is more moral than structural? Share your views in the comment section below. If you found this analysis insightful, please remember to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you don't miss our future reports and discussions on national issues. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next one.